Hello, Guy Denton. Welcome to The Wrong Stuff.
Hello, Matt Lewis. It's always good. Well, should I say always good? Maybe always bad? I don't know. The listeners can vote, but it's always something to be in the wrong place at the wrong time with you.
Well, let me start off by being a bummer. I do have an announcement. After 7 years, I will no longer be at the Daily Beast. At least I have a couple weeks left, or a week or so. Then I'm going to be gone from the Daily Beast. So I want to throw this out to the audience because I don't know what my next chapter is going to be. Male model, hand model, many options. But one option is to keep on doing what we're doing here. I could do a video every day. I could go into this Substack thing. Would you want to get a newsletter? Would you want a video every day? And then, of course, there's the Patreon. Maybe we put the videos up there instead of here on YouTube, or maybe we put them up there without ads. So I'm open. Let me know. I would love to hear from you in the comments. Or maybe you're going to say, look, there's too much commentary. There's too much of this. Go get a real job, get a haircut, get a real job. I already got the haircut. So anyway, that's my blag, as they call it. But Guy Denton, you're still gainfully employed.
For the time being, yes, that's true. Not deported. No, listeners should know that I was joking to Matt before we started recording about how we should both just sell out and become consultants or go into the private sector in some capacity. But I couldn't even maintain that joke without breaking, because things are so that the political landscape is so insane today, Matt, that I don't see how you can have too much commentary. There's simply too much to pick at. So why would you want to give it up?
Exactly. Although some of it can be depressing. See, I think here in the wrong place at the wrong time and the wrong stuff, we have fun. So I don't think I could ever leave this, but
that is
other
true.
Stuff, some of that stuff I could leave. All right. Enough, navel gazing about me. And yes, after 7 years, I think, what did you say? I get a Chick-fil-A card on my way out?
I'm sure. But no, we were joking. You may not be able to depart with them by giving your own motivational speech or anything like that, but I'm sure they'll give you a nice message and a gift certificate to see you through the coming weeks.
Luckily, I was forced to join this union, so I'm going to do better than the gift certificate. Although I do think if I brought up Chick-fil-A, people would start snapping. So I won't bring up the Chick-fil-A sandwich. But
yeah,
fantastic.
I think mentioning the spicy chicken sandwich would probably deprive you of your severance package.
All right, my friend. Well, let's start with next week. Could you believe there is a debate next week? I cannot believe it. That soon. This, it's very quick. But CNN is out with the debate rules. Here's a quick clip. We'll talk about it on the other end.
That's right, Natasha. President Biden and former President Trump are coming off a busy weekend of campaigning with just a little over a week left before the first presidential debate of this election cycle. And today, we now have some more details about what that face-off is going to look like.
I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
But you
I just want to make sure.
Joe, you're the liar.
I want to make sure.
Graduated last in your class, not first in your class.
Muted mics, no props, and 2 commercial breaks. The debate rules have been confirmed for the first 2024 presidential debate between President Biden and former President Trump. The debate's host network, CNN, releasing more details on the rules Sunday and announcing both candidates have accepted the terms of the format. Campaign staff is not allowed to interact with either Biden or Trump during the showdown, and there will not be a studio audience.
All right, so that was a clip from News Nation, which I watch sometimes, by the way. My first thought is, did you notice how sharp and young Joe Biden seemed in that clip from a debate?
I was about to say exactly the same thing. Yes, it was striking.
And we thought he was old then. We're going to get to that later. That's not even the topic of this. So the debate rules, Guy Denton, there will be no, two big things, I think. One, no live studio audience, so no applauding, clapping, laughing in studio. Lots of it at home, I'm sure. And then, the other big one is, that they're going to cut the microphone, right? So when it's not your turn, they will cut your microphone, obviously, to kind of avoid that crosstalk we saw during the first debate in 2020. I think this is rigged to benefit Joe Biden. I mean, the rules, obviously, this is exactly what Biden wanted. So I give kudos to Team Biden for outmaneuvering Trump and making this happen.
Listeners don't know, but that's actually what we do on this show to stifle our profane rants at one another in between the amusing political punditry. No, I think I read your column, Matt, and you raised the point of why would Trump have agreed to these rules in the first place? But it's difficult to say and seems almost inexplicable. And I think that the most likely case is that he agreed to the rules because his advisors have convinced him to avoid convinced him that he can actually benefit from the debate if he can avoid turning it into a demolition derby like he did last time. I mean, there was Politico had an interesting feature yesterday where they described how Trump has been actually meeting with, well, quote unquote, but still policy experts and senators and people with actual ideas and proposals to prepare for the debate, which would seemingly indicate that he wants to actually bring ideas and substance to the fight against Biden. And especially with how enfeebled Biden has appeared in recent months, a disciplined Trump who can inhibit his worst impulses and his worst verbal tendencies without sacrificing his humor, crucially, while also actually offering substance and actual considered points on a lot of the issues that people are concerned with and animated about in this election, could really be quite a deadly threat, regardless of whether CNN might have imposed these rules to try and stifle him.
Well, I agree, but that can't happen. Donald Trump is not capable of that. And I don't know if you saw this, but there was just a group of executives and business leaders who met with Donald Trump and came out of the room saying, like, this guy was more erratic, more chaotic, more, discursive than I thought. So Trump can't do that. I don't care if friggin' Henry Kissinger, he's dead, right? If he comes back and starts tutoring Donald Trump, it ain't gonna work. But what could help, to your point, is if they cut his mic and so he's not able to interrupt constantly. That could actually have the effect of helping Donald Trump come across better. I do agree with you on that. All right, let's take a quick break. And I just want to encourage you, if you like what we do here, please go to patreon.com/Matt Lewis and support us. There's also some cool merch you can get. We've got a coffee mug that, frankly, I love. I use all the time. And an autographed copy of one of my books, like Too Dumb to Fail or Filthy Rich Politicians. And of course, the most important part, you'll be helping us do what we do here. Thank you in advance, and let's get back to the show. I get that Trump and his team would be okay with muting the mics because that actually could inadvertently help Trump. The one that I think they should have fought for is the live audience, because I tell you, I mean, it really feels like Donald Trump feeds off of a live audience, that he just gets energy from them. And that's, you take that audience away, I really think that that's going to hurt Trump, especially as the debate wears on.
No, I think that's a great point, and it's absolutely true. Trump is a showman. Biden may have been a showman at one point in his political career, but he certainly isn't now. And I think a room full of eyes gawking at him, like at the end of like in the final scene of The Birds, can only help throw him off his game and make him feel even more self-conscious and uncomfortable about his general lack of diction and lack of focus in his speech than he would do otherwise. Whereas Trump, a crowd, especially again, if Trump can at least maintain some degree of self-control, if Trump can keep his humor intact and Trump comes prepared with actual zingers and sharp lines like he has done in the past, regardless of how crude they may or may not be, if he can play those off of an audience while also, again, actually offering maybe some degree of serious proposals that can stir undecided voters to think, well, I may not like the man, but I certainly felt like my life was going better and that things generally around the world were going better from 2016 to 2020 than they have been in the last 4 years. That could really work to his advantage.
So, I wrote this column for the Daily Beast where I raised these points, and I asked on Twitter or on X, I asked, why would Trump consent to this? Why would Trump sign on to this, to these rules? And he did agree to them, or his campaign agreed to them. And some people were saying, well, because Trump's not actually going to show up. So Sean Hannity, it's about a week old now, but actually was laying the groundwork for the notion that Trump shouldn't even show. Let's watch.
Now, there are some even saying, Mark, that Donald Trump might be wise to just pass on the first debate, wait till he's nominated, then debate him. What would you say to that?
So, and then Hannity more recently has started, I guess, pre-spinning a Biden debate victory by saying, of course, Biden's going to be great because he's on drugs or caffeine or whatever.
The Joe Biden that we're talking about tonight, I don't think will be the Joe Biden we're going to see on debate night. I think the Joe Biden we see on debate night is going to be the guy that we saw at the State of the Union. He's going to be all hyped up, hyper caffeinated, whatever it is. It's interesting that 70% of the country does like the idea of drug testing. I like the idea. They do it to athletes. They do it to horses in horse racing. Why not do it to presidential candidates? I like the idea. 70% of Americans apparently agree with me.
I would do it to talk show hosts, but that's just me. What do you make of that guy?
I think, to the first point, I think the notion that Trump might not show up and perhaps it would be wise for him not to show up is a ridiculous idea on the face of it. I mean, I'm surprised really that Hannity of all people would promulgate that idea, because you can't have it both ways. If Biden is completely vacant, then why would you not want to show up and why would you not want to humiliate him and make yourself look dominant on a debate stage? I mean, Trump can only either look lazy at best and craven at worst if he doesn't show up to debate someone who, especially if he backs out at the last minute of debating someone who seems so frail and vulnerable. And although if he did back out, it wouldn't make much difference to his base, why would he not want to assert himself and present himself as a more competent and collected and sensible alternative to all of the undecided voters, especially when the polls, once again, as we've been discussing in recent weeks, are down to the knife. And there was an NPR poll that came out earlier this week that found that going into the debate, Trump and Biden are tied in the eyes of registered voters. So I think it would be completely foolhardy for him to not take on the debate. And an actual productive debate for him, again, could substantiate the notion that he actually is a strong alternative to Biden and not just a wrecking ball who would drag the country back into the depths of degradation, as Biden would like us to believe that we fell into from 2016 to 2020.
All right. So is Joe Biden this sharp Machiavellian figure, or is Joe Biden this doddering old fool? That is the question. And there have been videos, like multiple videos over the last week or two, that repute to show him wandering off, staring into the middle space, confused. And I have thoughts about them. Martha McCallum over at Fox News recently did this little package, and we'll talk about it as we go.
These have not been cropped. They have not been sped up or slowed down or edited in any way. Let's go through them one by one.
Okay, so if you're listening instead of watching, because we do have podcast audio listeners, and then we have YouTube viewers. If you're listening, I think she does a pretty good job of explaining, but it may not be perfect.
That's the Juneteenth celebration at the White House. And here is the president last week standing very still at a White House celebration, while everybody around him is dancing. And here he is, this one.
Okay, so let's stop with that one. Old white guy standing still, surrounded by people dancing at a Juneteenth I don't know what we would call it, commemoration. weird, but not that weird, right?
No, certainly not. Although for listeners who can't see the clip, he certainly does look dazed and confused and like he has no sense of what's going on around him, which exacerbates things a bit.
But again, you know, that could be me standing there not dancing, you know, like not being able to, like, should we expect him to dance? I don't think so.
No, I think if anything, it would have looked significantly worse for him if he tried to dance.
Yes,
And the right-wing media would have fed off it even more than they've been able to feed off this.
I mean, do you remember Hillary doing the Macarena, or was that Tipper
Right.
Gore? I'm not sure. Not good. Okay, we'll keep going here.
This one is from 3 days later.
All right, this is Biden in Italy.
Okay, so something else draws his attention, it appears. He wanders away from the other G7 leaders during a skydiving demonstration, gives a thumbs up to some others who have landed in a nearby area. But then Giorgia Meloni, Italy's prime minister, goes over and, sort of pulls him back to the G7 leaders group where they're about to hear something from the jumper who then speaks to them. And here he...
Okay, so this one, I think part of it's the framing of the camera makes it look super bad, right? You see everybody else, there's a group of folks who are looking in one direction at one skydiver. Biden is the only one looking in the other direction, but there are other skydivers over there that he's like, right. So I think that this one, the cropping of the camera makes it look really bad.
And you can't actually see what he's looking at, too. I mean, who knows? We don't know, Matt. Could have been something really awesome over there that was attracting his attention. Probably not, but nonetheless.
No, there are other skydivers over there. I've seen different angles and stuff. So
no, that's what I mean. Who knows what they could have been doing?
He had not just wandered off. There were actual people there. Now, what makes it look bad, and it's the same thing in the next clip we're going to see, is when someone comes and gets him and sort of takes him by the hand and leads him back to the pack. I don't think that does him any favors, but maybe they're going to take a picture or they're going to listen to the guy, give a little talk or something. Anyway, I'll keep it going.
And here he is 2 days after this.
All right, let me just say, Martha McCallum said at the top of this whole segment, these are not like cropped videos or whatever. Like, she's wrong. This is actually a cropped video right here because I have seen the actual. So this is Joe Biden did a fundraiser, I think, in Hollywood. Jimmy Kimmel is moderating. He's interviewing Obama and President Biden. And this, you can tell, this is a vertical video. It is not a full horizontal video. So this is in fact not the way that it would have been consumed naturally. But it's also not a complete deep fake either. Like, this really happened. It's just being cropped.
Okay, so that's the last one. He appeared kind of frozen on the stage. This also got a ton of attention after the star-studded fundraiser in California. And you can see that former President Obama kind of taps him on the hand, puts his hand over the current president's hand, and kind of pulls a little bit. You can see that quite clearly. And then he has his hand on his back as the president slowly leaves the stage. He's kind of gearing him towards the exit area where they're going. So the White House, I guess, wants you to believe that these things are...
All right, so I've seen another video of this, which I think apparently went out on Zoom or wherever, where you can't really see the Obama grabbing his hand thing is not that clear because they have pulled back into a very wide view. So I've seen a different angle of this and some, but so the version that Martha McCollum showed looks worse than the other video, but it's not fake. And in fact, it is clear that Obama does kind of take his hand and usher him off stage. How bad is that?
I think what underlines all of this, regardless of, let's say all of those clips were fake, it still wouldn't change the salient point that every time you look at Biden, you're reminded of his age. And his age seems like an issue and seems like something problematic and concerning. It's just inescapable that that's the case. And I think that going back to what we were talking about before with the debate, Biden at this point, a lot of the failures of his campaign, he only has himself to blame for them. And he has to prove to undecided voters at this point that he deserves to be reelected. And probably the best way he can do that is by showing up to the debate and hopefully having Trump make a buffoon of himself. But even if Trump doesn't do that, Biden really needs to demonstrate next week that he hasn't lost all of his vitality, that he still has some spryness, that he still has some quickness of wit, but he can take the questions he's given and actually argue for his positions and make a compelling case for why he deserves to be reelected without relying on a script and without literally having people there to hold his hand like we just saw in that last clip.
That's where the drugs come in, my friend.
Well, yes.
Look, the expectations are low. This is great for Biden, you could argue. I mean, people are expecting him to like drool on himself and fall off the stage. If he shows up and has a good debate, then he wins. And I think that his team, back to my column at the Daily Beast, I think his team has done as much as they can to mitigate the potential for disaster by cutting off Trump's mic when he's not speaking, which could confuse any of us. But Biden's train of thought, you're trying to say something and you keep getting interrupted, it makes it more difficult to remember it. And then by not having that live audience who could be jeering, applauding, laughing, whatever. So in many ways, I think we are poised for Biden to do better than expected, partly because the expectations are so low.
I think that's absolutely true. And the only gamble is that because the expectations are so low, if Biden performs poorly and does not do better than expected, that's going to make him look even worse, and it's going to be especially damning and embarrassing.
Yeah.
Especially considering that then we're going to have to wait, 2 months, 3 months until the next debate where he can potentially salvage it.
But there is a theory that this is a conspiracy theory by definition, I think, but there is a theory that part of the reason they wanted to do this debate now in June, which is way earlier than you would ever have a general election debate, is that if Biden does fall on his face, they have time to replace him with Michelle Obama or Hillary Clinton or whoever. Somebody could swoop in and replace him at the convention. I think that is highly unlikely. But what would happen if he was a mess at that debate?
I agree that it's highly unlikely. I don't see it happening. I think if he's a mess at the debate, it won't. He'll remain the nominee because he's been a mess for months now, and he's been a mess in numerous public situations, in numerous interviews. Anyone listening who read the transcript of his interview to Time a few weeks ago will know exactly what I'm talking about. But for listeners who haven't, read the full transcript. You can find it online. He sounds almost unhinged, almost deranged in places, in a similar way to the way Trump sounds unhinged and deranged. But the Democrats have dug themselves into this hole, and I think they can't see any way of getting out of it besides trying to dig their way out.
Well, the other side has troubles too, and I'll have a couple. I already mentioned Donald Trump having that meeting with CEOs or executives where they came out less optimistic about Trump than when they went in. Did you see this guy? Trump had a rally or something at a black church in Detroit. Kellyanne Conway said there were 8,000 people there. It looked like there were like 150. And it turns out most of the people in the audience were white. Did you see this?
Keep saying, oh, black people are going to him. Can we look at the church? Can we get a
This is
visual
Whoopi.
of the church?
Of the black church.
Yeah. Now, I'm not sure that most of these people even knew where that church was before they knew he was coming there.
All right, so that was The View making fun of it. You could tell. I mean, not exactly. First of all, not that big of a crowd. Second of all, at best, 50% of the audience were black. But yeah, so Trump is also doing ridiculous stuff. And Biden is out with a new ad this week, Guy Denton, making the point that he is a convicted felon. Not just that, but putting it in more context, talking about him being found liable for sexual assault. There is some polling that would now suggest, in fact, that the being found guilty in the New York hush money case is actually hurting Donald Trump. Here is the Biden ad.
In the courtroom, we see Donald Trump for who he is. He's been convicted of 34 felonies, found liable for sexual assault, and he committed financial fraud. Meanwhile, Joe Biden's been working, lowering healthcare costs and making big corporations pay their fair share. This election is between a convicted criminal who's only out for himself and a president who's fighting for your family.
I'm Joe Biden.
What do you think? Does this move the needle?
Well, anything the Turning Point crowd can merchandise, I'm sure they will. I don't think it moves the needle without, again, something more substantial to underpin it. I think it's a perfectly fair line of attack and a perfectly good hook for an ad campaign like that. But again, if Biden doesn't appear to actually be conscious himself and can't actually offer ideas and proposals of his own that can sway the voters he needs to sway, then simply pointing to Trump and saying he was convicted for reasons that most people, including probably most people in the jury at the trial, could not even begin to explain, isn't really going to do much for him.
All right, let's end with, since they mentioned the positive story, Tom Brady, of course, the great Patriots and Buccaneers quarterback, was just inducted into the New England Patriots Hall of Fame, and he gave a really awesome speech. Here's a clip of it.
Encourage everyone to play football for the simple reason that it is hard. It's hard when you're young to wake up in the off season at 6 a.m. to go train and work out, knowing that all your friends are sleeping in and eating pancakes. It's hard when you're on your way to practice, weighed down with all your gear, and it's 90 degrees out and all the other kids are at the pool or at the beach, and your body is already completely exhausted from workouts in 2 days. It's hard to throw, catch, block, and tackle, and hit kids when they're way bigger and way more developed than you, only to go home that night bruised and battered and strained, but knowing you have to show up again the next day for just the chance to try again. But understand this, life is hard. No matter who you are, there are bumps and hits and bruises along the way. And my advice is to prepare yourself, because football lessons teach us that success and achievement come from overcoming adversity, and that team accomplishment far exceeds anyone's individual goals. To be successful at anything, the truth is you don't have to be special. You just have to be what most people aren't. Consistent, determined, and willing to work for it. No shortcuts. If you look at all my teammates here tonight, it would be impossible to find better examples of men who embody that work ethic, integrity, purpose, determination, and discipline that it takes to be a champion in life.
Anyway, what'd you think of all that, Guy Denton?
No, it's a very powerful speech, and I like that he snuck in the line about how I've immediately forgotten the phrasing he used, but how individual goal, especially in a team-like environment, individual goals shouldn't trump the goals of a collective. Which you have to be careful how you apply that to politics, so you don't sound communistic. But I think it's certainly certainly a germane point to what we're seeing in the coming election cycle, where we have a Republican nominee, at least, who is very much motivated by and has always been motivated entirely by self-interest and by indulging his own ego. And whether he can put that aside, whether if we really do end up with a second Trump term, if he really can put that aside for the good of the country and, well, I don't think for the good of a conservative movement and the good of a sane conservatism, but nonetheless, that remains to be seen. But he could certainly be well served by listening to that speech.
All right, it's cold gin time again, my friend. What have you been watching, listening to, enjoying lately?
I haven't been watching much. It's a desolate time for movies right now, and I'm out of the habit of watching TV. But I have been reading two good books. I'm right in the middle. It's not new, but George Will, I think it was 2 years ago, put out a collection of his columns called American Happiness and Discontents that I finally got around to picking up, and I'm flicking through it right now, reading all the columns here and there, and it's excellent and edifying, as you'd expect, and I eagerly look forward to stealing all of his ideas and repurposing them on this show. And I'm also reading, and I've forgotten the title, shockingly enough, but I'm sure if people just Google the terms that I'm about to use, they can find it. A book by an author named Francis Barry about road trips and the nature of the Great American Road Trip and what traveling across the United States can teach us about the heart of America and its culture and its traditions and civilization. I'll be reviewing it here in a week or two, and the book is a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it so far.
Will that be at the Washington Free Beacon?
It will indeed. Shamelessly plugged.
Nice. I've been rereading some. I was at Colorado Springs, poolside, rereading some old Joan Didion, Slouching Toward Bethlehem, collected essays, which I highly recommend. But, the thing is, the most important thing are the Orioles. You're a Baltimore Orioles. I know you're coming over, right? You need to adopt an American baseball team. You're now an Orioles fan, I understand. They took 2 out of 3 from the Phillies, a very good team. And as we speak tonight, Guy Denton, they will begin a 3-game series against the New York Yankees. This will tell us much about the American League East and Major League Baseball. And fingers crossed that our Orioles, will defeat the evil empire that is known as the New York Yankees.
New York is an evil empire in so many ways, Matt. So I am firmly in your corner on this.
All right, you drive us wild, we'll drive you crazy. We'll see you back here next week in the wrong place at the wrong time and the wrong stop.
If you like what you heard here today, please make sure to follow the show, subscribe to the show, leave a like, review the show wherever you get your podcast, and also please smash that like button, or whatever the people my age are saying. I don't know. I am a Kiss fan after all. But nonetheless, you can also follow us on X at WrongStuffPod, or drop us a note. Fawning praise or scornful disdain, we accept both. At the Wrong Stuff Pod, all one word, at gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. We're looking forward to next time.